In the previous exercise, we added some files to our empty Git repo, and then we used the git add command to then stage those files. So, of course, the next step, that once you have all of the files staged that you want for your next commit, the next step is to go ahead and do the commit itself. And that's taking that sort of snapshot of the project at that moment in time. Now, my terminal window here is kind of messy, so I'm going to type in the word clear, and that's just going to clear off all the cruft from the screen. Now, a lot of times I'll come in and I'll want to make a commit, and I'll open up my terminal window and I'll say, okay, what's the current status of the project? So again, we know that all we have to do is type in git status and we'll get that feedback. So I recommend doing git status before every single commit because it tells you what's going to happen in this snapshot. And maybe this looks exactly the way you want it to, maybe it doesn't. So I can actually see there are all of the files that are being committed. And there's actually right here, it says use git remove -- cached and then the name of the file to unstage. So if there were one of these that you're like, oh man, I didn't mean to commit the CSS yet, you could remove that from the staged area if you want. So remember, this is just the staging area. Now it's ready to commit. So in order to do your first commit, it's a very simple command, git space commit. That is it. You hit return and something weird's going to happen. As I mentioned to you guys before, I'm not a command line warrior. This is not where I spend most of my time. I'm in graphics editors or, brackets or code editor or something like that. I don't spend a whole lot of time in command line. So I'm going to be totally forthright and honest with you guys here. When I first started learning Git for the very first time, when I started noodling down and learned it, this threw me because I'm not in the terminal window anymore. I'm in a text editor called Vim. Well, I didn't know that, and I kept trying to type in as if I were in terminal, and everything started messing up. So you can actually see the title bar of the window up there. It says Git Basics -Vim. So I'm actually in a Vim, which is a text editor. So when you do a commit and you don't specify anything else, when you just do a basic git commit command the way we just did it, Git says, oh, okay, well, you have to write a message. And that message for your commit typically has a status line that explains, it's kind of a short title of the message, and then a longer message body that gives a little bit more detail about what's going on in the commit. This is a really important process of the commit because you need to explain fully what's happening in that snapshot. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in initial commit right up there at the top. Now, all that stuff underneath it, you can just ignore it because all of that is going to be removed because it has a hash in front of it. So it's kind of like a comment, if you will, in normal text editors. It will be ignored. This is just a message to you, dear reader, to help you understand what's happening and what you'll need to do. So it tells you the files are going to be committed, that sort of thing. Now, if I hit return a couple of times, I can come down here and then I'm going to type in, this is my initial commit in my new Git repo. It's going great so far. Exclamation point, because I'm very excited about it. All right, so that's all that's going to be stored in the message. All the stuff below will be thrown away. Now, I'm in the Vim editor, and I need to get out of the Vim editor. And to do that, I'm going to type in escape, and then a colon, and then a WQ, which will write and save the file. There are other commands you could use. If you know Vim very well, there's like a couple of different keystrokes that'll get you out of that. But I got to tell you something, the very first time I did that one took me a while to kind of figure out how to get back to what I was doing. All right, if you hate Vim like me, you don't have to do it that way. Before we move on to committing in a slightly more efficient manner, take a look at what just happened. You'll notice that right above the cursor, I have some confirmation about my initial commit. So my initial commit was made. I had 7 files changed, 230 insertions. It shows me all the files that were committed. And so I get a nice rundown of everything that got added to that particular snapshot. So we created a new commit, and all of those files were added to it. That means if I run git status right now, you'll notice that it says there's nothing to commit. The working directory is clean. That means we've just taken a snapshot, and right now the working directory looks exactly like that snapshot. There have been no changes made to that. Well, I'm going to change that. Now, I don't like using Vim, so I'm going to use another text editor. I'm going to open up text edit. Now in text edit, really, you can open up any plain text editor to do what we're about to do. We're going to create a README file for our project. And you want to just open up a generic text editor that allows you to create plain text files. What I'm going to do at the top of this is I'm going to type in Git Basics. And then a couple of lines below that, I'm going to type in, I'm learning the basics of Git and GitHub. So this repo is really just for experimenting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to my desktop, to my repos, into Git Basics. And here I'm just going to save this as readme.txt. Now, you want to make sure that this is a plain text, so not rich text, just a plain text file. and go ahead and save that. Okay, now since we have now created a new file and saved it into that repo, if I run a git status now, I can see that there's one untracked file. We added a file that is not currently being tracked. So to track that, remember how easy this was? We type in git add, and then we can do the name of the file, readme.txt. So that stages it. And if I do a git status again, it tells me, okay, everything's good, but we have a new file that's been moved to the staging area and it's ready to be committed. So I'm going to do another commit to follow up our initial commit that's going to add the README file. But this time, I don't want to go into the Vim text editor. Well, if you are making a commit and you have just a really short message that you want to pass on, it's really easy to do that in one command. So I'm going to type in git commit space -m for message, and then another space, and then quotation marks. You can type in whatever message you want. And this time, I'm going to type in added a README file. So you want it to be very descriptive. So again, it's git space commit space -m space, and then the commit message. So this saves you from firing up the Vim editor, and if you hit return, you'll notice it went ahead and made the commit, and it inserted our README text file. Perfect. So we now have two commits, each one of them the result of tracking some new files. And next, we're going to explore how to deal with files that have been modified from the previous commit.